a mountain boy who defied all odds and became one of the greatest heroes in American history. This is the incredible true story of Willie Sandlin. Willie Sandlin was born on New Year's Day, 1890, in Bloody Breathitt County, Kentucky, near the head of Freeman's Fork on Long's Creek. His father had literally just carved a small farm out of the endless forest alongside his half-Cherokee wife, who was every bit as tough as he was. They did their best to raise their 5 sons for what little time they were together. But truth be told, this was probably the hardest period of young Willie's life, because by the time he was 10, his father was in prison for murder and his mother died that same year while giving birth to another child. So there they were, 5 boys, essentially orphaned, and no one in those unforgiving mountains had the means to take in 5 more mouths to feed. So the young boys were separated and taken in by relatives who were spread out all over eastern Kentucky. Willie, well, he ended up in Leslie County, Kentucky, in a place that might as well have been on another planet. The area was as wild a place that still remained in America at that time. There were no roads and no railroads in the entire county. But this is where Willie would grow up, on Devil's Jump Branch, just off of Hell for Certain Creek. The mountain boy spent his youth exploring these hills, always with a rifle in his hand. It was just as natural as breathing. It became clear early on that it would be up to the young boy to figure out how to reach manhood on his own the best he could. And the hardships of his youth taught him how to take care of himself. Willie pretty much bypassed all schooling, since reading and writing, they were completely useless skills in these rugged wilds. Yet, he grew up straight as an arrow, with keen, alert, and steady black eyes. Now, he probably never realized it at the time, but roaming these mountains made him strong, with an unmatched endurance and tolerance for pain. And while this youngster was thankful for his uncle for taking him in, Willie couldn't wait for the day when he would get a chance to see what was beyond these rugged mountains. Surely, there was something out there, and he was bound to make his mark on this whole world. Jackson, Kentucky. That's where he saw a sign from Uncle Sam outside an Army recruiter's office. It promised that enlisted men could see the world if they were willing to fight for America. And the way Willie saw it, well, he had already been fighting his entire life just to survive. And just like that, Willie Sandlin joined the U.S. Army, and within a few months, he was on the first train he had ever seen in his life. And that train was full of young men from small towns and cities all across America, and they were all bound for basic training, where the main objective of the Army seemed to be to make those boys march until they dropped, and to teach them how to shoot. But for Willie, walking with the nice, brand new government-issued boots on flat land was nothing for a mountaineer like him. He easily outlasted the other men in his company. Same thing with shooting. Those city boys were busy learning how to hold and aim a rifle, while Willie, he had emptied all his ammo into the bullseye of the target and was proceeding to tear down his weapon into 100 pieces, cleaning it with the skill of a master marksman. Because of this, Sandlin quickly caught the eye of the officers and was promptly put on another train and shipped south, bound for the Mexican border, where he patrolled Texas and Arizona for the next few years. Army life came natural for the mountaineer, and he was promoted several times and even put in charge of training new recruits. It flew by so fast, it seemed like Willie was just getting started. when he was handed his discharge papers in 1917 after serving 4 years. But when Willie returned home to Kentucky, he never even had a chance to get settled when all hell broke loose, with the United States officially entering World War I in April of 1917. Suddenly, all across America, each county was sent a quota for men to be shipped off to the conflict in Europe. Then, when that quota wasn't met, the government instituted a draft, forcing able-bodied men to fight. Every county in America instituted this draft, all except one, Bloody Breathitt County, Kentucky. Men there had been fighting in some of the bloodiest feuds, and was home to some of the most notorious outlaws that have ever roamed America. This was the only county in America that didn't have a draft, because every man volunteered to fight, including Willie Sandlin. Less than 2 weeks after America declared war, he was on a train headed to Boston, Massachusetts, and then on a ship sailing across the ocean, bound for the front lines in France. The men arrived in Liverpool, England, and a few days later, they were on the move again to France. Willie was placed under the command of General John Pershing and assigned to the 132nd Infantry, 33rd Division, where he was placed in charge of his platoon as a sergeant. Now, the first thing the men were issued was gas masks. They seemed to always be on the move, never staying in a town or village for more than just a few weeks, marching around and training before loading a train bound for another small town and repeating the process all over again. Occasionally, Willie's unit was sent into the combat zone, working their way up from the rear and relieving other units. Most of the time was spent in wet trenches, where they waited for command to move to a new position and then wait again. Occasionally, there'd been a small skirmish, and putting on those gas masks, well, it became second nature from the constant barrage of gas shells. But for Willie Sandlin, it would be the events of September 26, 1918, that would forever define his life. And what happens next would change the entire course of World War I. Hey guys, J.D. Phillips here from the Appalachian Storyteller, and I hope you're enjoying this true story about a great American hero, Willie Sandlin. If you enjoy stories like this, I hope you'll consider checking out my brand new book. It's packed with stories just like this one. And now, back to the story. For weeks, Willie's company had been pushing deeper and deeper into enemy territory when they found themselves on the front lines in the Argonne Forest. The ground was a mess of thick mud, churned up by artillery and the boots of countless soldiers who had passed through. The air had a damp, earthy smell, mingled with the sharp tang of cordite and the faint, sickening whiff of gas. Everywhere you looked, trees were snapped like matchsticks, their splintered trunks standing as grave markers for the men who had fallen in the dirt below. Shell craters littered the ground, some so deep you could lose a man in them. And then there was the constant noise, the rumble of artillery, the crack of gunfire, the groan of planes overhead. It was a war zone, unlike anything any of the men had ever seen. The morning began with Willie's unit pinned down. Orders were given to halt and dig in as a German machine gun nest mowed down any man who dared to advance. As all the men laid on the ground, Willie kept studying the pattern of the machine gun crossfire, and he calculated that there might be a narrow path in the center where the swinging machine gun spray would go over his head. Despite orders to lay down, Willie took 4 grenades from the men around him, and armed with nothing more than his rifle and a sidearm, Willie stood up and began charging towards the 8 Germans manning those machine guns. Bullets zipped by him as he ran, and when he was about 30 yards away, he threw his first grenade. but it exploded in front of the Germans and did no damage. Realizing that the American was out of the reach of their machine guns, the Germans began firing their pistols at Willie, who was still advancing and throwing grenades. The next 2 grenades hit their mark, landing in the German trench and killing several men. And then Willie began to return fire with his sidearm until both he and the Germans had exhausted their ammo. He threw his final grenade, which hit its mark again, and then all the shooting stopped. Seeing his chance, Willie advanced and jumped into the German trench, with his only weapon being the bayonet on his rifle. The grenades had killed 6 men, but 2 were still alive and completely out of ammo. From the moment Willie landed in the trench, they charged at him, but he quickly put them down with his bayonet. Willie had single-handedly cleared the entire machine gun nest, killing every man in it.
J.D. Phillips here from the Appalachian Storyteller as we continue with the incredible true story of Willie Sandlin, Kentucky's only Medal of Honor recipient.
His men quickly regrouped, and they continued pushing forward, when just a short while later, they were stopped by another machine gun nest. Doing exactly the same technique, Willie Sandlin furled 4 grenades and stormed the machine gun nest, again killing every man in it. Still not done. That afternoon, Willie charged a 3rd machine gun nest in the same manner, killing all of his occupants, and then he found himself in hand-to-hand combat with a German lieutenant who was in a foul mood. Both men fought viciously, with each man's life hanging in the balance. The German tried desperately to point his Luger pistol at Willie, but the 2 battled like wild animals, each trying to gain the upper hand. But Sandlin's endurance and strength was too much, and finally he overpowered the German and shot him dead with his own gun. Incredibly, Willie Sandlin, the mountain boy from Kentucky, had killed 24 Germans and was responsible for the capture of 200 prisoners in a single day. For his actions, Willie was awarded France's highest military honor for bravery, the Croix de Guerre, and the highest American military honor, the Medal of Honor. In fact, the boy who grew up in the Kentucky mountains received the 2nd most medals of any man in World War I. Now, everybody told Willie that these medals would make him rich when he returned to America. He would be a national celebrity. Yet, for all the untold horrors of war that Willie surely carried with him for the rest of his life, when he returned to America, he put all of those medals in his pocket and shied away from any and all publicity. Instead, he returned home to his small farm in the Kentucky mountains. But the war had taken a toll on him. Willie Sandlin was gassed twice and suffered permanent lung damage for the rest of his life. Sadly, the country for which he had fought so bravely for didn't show the same loyalty when it came time to pay the mountaineer for his service. Willie would spend the rest of his life trying to get the government to pay him a disability benefit for his lungs. Yet the slow, grinding wheels of bureaucracy denied him time and time again. During his life, Willie Sandlin was only paid from $10 to $69 a month for his sacrifice to America, and he never received a penny for being gassed twice in the war. Despite this, Willie remained a loyal patriot to his country and to the people of Appalachia. He worked non-stop, trying to improve the quality of life for mountaineers. Both he and his wife worked with Mary Breckenridge Frontier Nursing Service in an effort to improve health care, and he joined the literacy campaign of Cora Wilson Stewart's Moonlight School, and he was dedicated to eradicating illiteracy and educating military men about their rights and their responsibilities. He was also an advocate for better benefits and compensation for soldiers who had returned home forever changed by the horrors of war. But as for personal recognition, Willie never sought it. He avoided public speaking anytime he could, and when asked to see his medals, he would claim that he misplaced them years ago, and was even known to reply, "Oh shucks, those things aren't a big deal. Besides, you can't eat medals." Despite his declining health, he never lost his fighting spirit, and even at 52 years old, when he was very sick, he was one of the first to volunteer to fight in World War II after the attack of Pearl Harbor. Willie Sandlin was the very definition of an American hero. Willie Sandlin, Kentucky's greatest hero, died in 1949 from the poisonous gas from World War I that finally caused his lungs to fail. Today, he rests in Leslie County, Kentucky, at the Kentucky Veterans Cemetery Southeast, in those same mountains he grew up in and loved so much. He and his wife were the first to ever be buried here, sharing the same tombstone. Earlier, I mentioned that Willie earned the second most medals of World War I. And I'm sure you're probably aware of who earned the most medals, Alvin York. Ironically, these two American heroes both came from Appalachia. And Alvin York's heroic events took place just a couple of weeks after Willie's capture of the 3 German machine gun nests. And while York and Sandlin share remarkably similar childhoods from the mountains, their lives after the war couldn't have been any more different. You see, a Hollywood movie was made about York. A school was built in his name. And the state of Tennessee, well, they gave him a house and a farm. And by every measure, he deserved it. He was truly a great American. As for Willie Sandlin, well, most people probably have never heard this American hero's story until now. And it's been my honor to share it with you. And before I go, I'd like to leave you with a final quote from Willie. "I've only had 2 really happy days in my life. One was when General Pershing pinned the Congressional Medal of Honor on my chest, and the other was the day I returned home. While I was in the fields of France, my heart was in the hills of Kentucky." Till next time, my friends, thanks so much for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe for more true stories from Appalachia's past.